Hi, I'm Tom, and it's camera test time. Now today we will be testing the Komodo X, which is, there you can see Komodo X just written there on the side, which is very similar to the original Komodo, but it's got a few different features on it and stuff, but it's similar shape. And we're comparing it to the C70, which I've had for quite a while now. It's like a little workhorse kind of camera, really. They're a little bit different in kind of shape and usability. This one, it's like a digital SLR. It's chunky. It's got a built-in handle. You don't have to rig it at all, really. It's ready to go. And then this one is kind of a cube, which you attach stuff to. So once you've attached a few things to them, they're pretty similar in size and weight, to be honest. And I usually keep the Komodo like this so I can just grab it, stick a battery on it and go. But yeah, those are the two we're going to be comparing today. So I own the original Komodo and used it on multiple feature films. It became by far my most financially successful Red camera that I'd ever had because of the low frame rates and great raw workflow. I used most of it on narrative film work and used my Canon C70 for everything else, which obviously had the option for slow motion, so I tended to go towards the C70 for anything like that, and then the Komodo was for kind of feature films and things that just didn't really want high speed, just like 24p, you know. I traded the Komodo for the Komodo X as I felt it might be more robust for film set conditions, and it had the option to shoot 4K at 120 frames per second if I needed it. And it obviously had V-lock batteries built in. It was just a little bit more robust, I thought. You know, sometimes on set the original Komodo was a little bit flimsy in some areas. In the meantime, the C70 had gained internal RAW through kind of an update. So the cameras were kind of starting to get closer together in features. My feature film work has actually pretty much dried up quite a lot since buying the Komodo X. I think it's a 2024 thing, but so I haven't really used it much, and I'm starting to think to myself that these cameras are very similar in spec-wise now. Do I really need the Red? So I thought I would compare them both in raw light mode, see how they look straight out of camera, and if there's much or any difference in the quality of the image. I wanted to compare the 120 frames per second quality, as well as the, you know, even through the C70 you can only do that in Canon's own compressed codec. I still wanted to compare them, you know, because that's obviously one of the reasons the Komodo X was better, because it did those high frame rates, but I wanted to know how it compared to my C70, and I thought they would either be so similar that you could sell the Komodo X without worrying too much, or that the Komodo X would outperform the C70 to enough of a degree that I could start, you know, using it on more commercial shoots and putting up with slightly more difficult usability of the Komodo. I did not compare dynamic range really, as I was slightly unsure of the best way to do that. Thinking about it now, I probably should have had a colored chart board in the shop, which might have shown some interesting things to kind of analyze from it, but I didn't, but next time. I also did not do any stress tests, as I wanted to compare them in normal shooting conditions, which you know, I tend to kind of do a lot of prep before shoots, and I very rarely am I shooting in crazy conditions with it crazily overexposed and things like that. I like to get it right in camera, so realistically it wasn't really worth me doing that. So on to the comparison then. We see straight out of camera that the Komodo X has a slight blue shift. It looks a bit cold, while the C70 looks much warmer, which is kind of typical of Canon. But it does look more pleasing, I think. So what I wanted to do is see which one was actually the more natural, more accurate. So I used the white socks on our lovely model, and I went into DaVinci Resolve, and I used the RGB picker to go onto those white socks and see what was going on in each channel. The C70 is pretty much the same values on each RGB channel, which essentially means it's a perfect white, while the Komodo X was lacking a bit in the green channel. and even just lacking a little bit when it comes to like people and skin tone. If it's just off a little bit, it really does show. So the result of that is the C70 is giving a more natural and color accurate image straight out of camera. On the 5x zooms, we see a very subtle sharpness boost for the Komodo X, as it's shooting in 6K rather than 4K. I would have expected this to be more noticeable, to be honest, than it actually is, as the difference is fairly minimal. The close-up shots I shot afterwards don't really reveal anything else, and fine detail looks about the same on both cameras. The autofocus test surprised me a lot, as I think the Red camera actually stuck to the face much better than the Canon. The only issue was when the face gets hidden, the focus snaps onto the background in a very electronic way. I think this could be usable for certain shots though, and quite impressive from the Red camera, and I think if they can add like a face only feature, that would be really, really good. I'm right up there, I would say, with the Canons. The C70 though, it was a little bit slow. It lost the face on a number of occasions, especially when we were walking kind of more quickly towards the camera. When it's slow, it seems to be okay, but like it's a little, it's not 100% locked onto that face, which was slightly disappointing. But to be honest, in normal use, when I've been out in the field, for most of things where I've wanted to use it for, it hasn't let me down that often, especially when it's decent light. So, you know, could be better, but I could live with it. Now finally, the slow-mo, which I was very curious about, as it was quite an important part of getting the Komodo X. I expected a little noise from the Komodo as it was cropping the sensor slightly to get to 4K from 6K, and it was raw as well. So I thought, well, you know, it's going to get a bit of noise, was the Canon was a 10-bit codec. However, I did expect more sharpness and detail on the Red than the Canon, and I was quite surprised that I did not see any more sharpness or detail. All I saw was more noise. And you'd think that once that noise is removed in post, then the C70 would probably look a little bit sharper after that. So I think this is a big win for the C70. My final thoughts are that for my current needs, I didn't see the Red Komodo X offering me too much or anything really that I couldn't use the Canon C70 for. As now the Canon C70 is raw as well, I don't see why it couldn't do a job on a film set, really. I mean, producers are always going to lean towards the Red for the name, but in practical terms, I don't really see any difference except a slightly higher resolution on the Red. Also, while doing this test, I forgot how fiddly the Komodo is compared to the C70. As soon as the Red is up on a tripod, it becomes impossible to see the menu screen to change the settings without tilting the tripod head back, as all the buttons are on the top too, and the menu does not come up on the connected monitor. So it becomes very difficult to use. I know there's workarounds for this, but they all require extra bits of kit or using your phone and the app, which I don't often want to do. The C70, well, has a twisty side screen, which you can see the menu on, and it has multiple buttons on the sides, on the back of the camera, so I never have this problem. Plus, it boots up much faster too. There are advantages to the Komodo X that I haven't mentioned, such as the global shutter, 16-bit RAW rather than 12-bit on the Canon, as well as potentially useful gyro information that the Komodo captures. So, you know, maybe useful for virtual productions and things like that. However, to be honest, none of them really affect how I work much, so I think they're fairly irrelevant for this test and for me. The downsides to the C70 are the max 4K resolution, which is a bit limiting for reframing on 4K delivery projects, and Final Cut still does not have a fully functioning Canon RAW workflow. So you still can't change ISO or white balance on Final Cut Pro, which is kind of nuts, seeing as it's been out for so long, those kind of Canon RAW cameras now. However, in DaVinci Resolve, it does allow all of these corrections, and it seems to run great. So, you know, at least that's something. Overall, my conclusion is to sell my Red Komodo X and offer up my Canon C70 and Canon R5C as a pair to film productions in the future. It might not sound as sexy, but the results will be pretty much the same, and I'm tired of keeping expensive cameras just in case an indie film producer demands it. Do you guys have any thoughts? Let me know in the comments. Do you like the Red more? Is there a reason that you'd go for one over the other? And if anyone wants to buy my Red, let me know. Cheers.